So this podcast, I want to hit on David, whose coaching packages start at $5,000. That was the topic we didn't get to last episode. And then I wrote a new section of the book today that I want to go over, which is actually is the title of something you said in the last episode, which is it's better to be a big fish in a small pond than a small fish in a big pond. And what I talk about in that section are two examples of coaches who have leveraged technology and basically used services available to online trainers, but work locally, and how much of an advantage and leg up it's given them. And both of their businesses are about $250,000, $260,000 a year, super profitable. And so I want to get into both those, but first, Ronald.
It's Mr. Ronald to you, Jonathan.
Should we talk about who's missing today?
Yeah.
I feel like you and I are 15-year-old high school students whose parents finally left them alone in the house for the first time ever. Right. And I feel like we're going straight to that alcohol cabinet. We're going to grab that bottle of vodka. We're going to pour half that shit into our own bottle. We're going to fill up the rest up with water, and we're going to think that nobody's going to notice.
It's pretty much when I showed up for the listeners here, when I showed up and there was no third window in our 3-windowed Zoom podcast recording, my immediate thought was, oh shit. And as that thought came to mind, my mouth automatically said, are you in charge today, John? It was a great fear.
My parents' house had a nickname growing up. You want to know what that nickname was?
I'm scared to know, Jonathan.
It was called the Keg Mansion.
Oh my God.
No joke. My house in high school was the house that we threw parties at. My parents would go away.
Oh, man.
And I threw keg parties. And every time my parents thought that I wasn't going to do it again. And I never got into that much trouble for it.
Right.
They'd be like, hey, John, why is the garbage can cut open in half? Right. And I was like, I think it got hit by a car. And they're like, our neighbor said that there was a lot of people here the other day. Was there a keg in it? And then you couldn't get the keg out of the garbage can, so you had to cut open the garbage can. I was like, no, it was a car.
Oh my gosh. This connects the last dot on your personality for me, by the way. Like this is the last piece of evidence I needed to confirm what I thought about your personality. So thank you for sharing with us all, John. That makes sense. But we got a good agenda today.
We got a good agenda today.
Even though, because the last time, let's be frank, John, the last time it was just you and me. It wasn't that great of a show. It was
a bad episode.
It was early on. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we sort of both heard it and sort of simultaneously admitted that wasn't that good.
It wasn't that good.
Right.
It was a low point.
But we got an agenda.
There's peaks and there's valleys.
There are.
In any journey. Yeah. And in our journey, when you and I, that was a valley. Okay. Today we're going to start with an example. This is David. David's coaching packages start at $5,000. Now I'm going to tell this story, and you might listen to the story and you might say, oh, there's no way in hell I could do that. That doesn't apply to you. And you might be right. But what I encourage you to do is I encourage you to think about the overlying philosophy of the story and see how you might be able to apply it to you, or you might just be able to do it because David figured out a way to do it, even though he didn't have much money to start, and then he built his way up. And then the other two examples are much more like homegrown examples, which is why I kind of like these. There's actually two examples in the second example. There's two different people, and they're similar but different, same but different. And so we'll get into those as well. Whenever I traveled through Asia, there were always these shirts that you could buy in like Thailand, and the shirts would say same but different. And it's because there was this trend amongst Asian couples, like men and women, that they'd wear the same clothes. And so it became a joke that it would be like same but different. Anyway, same but different. Okay, let's talk about David. So you've never heard of David. You'd never be able to find him. David helps high-performing men. This is like his like cheesy like phrase, right? Which he never really uses, but like this is just kind of like what he keeps in his back pocket. David helps high-performing men level up mentally and physically. David now has so many clients that he's hired 3 assistant coaches. So David's got a good business, right? His coaching packages start at $5,000, go off from there. Not only does he not create content, he doesn't have a single social media account or a website. So how the hell does he get clients? Well, David joins business masterminds. It's kind of hard to convince people to spend money on an expensive coach that have never hired an expensive coach before.
Mm-hmm.
It's also really hard to convince people to pay a premium for a better service purely through content. Like if you attract somebody purely through content, it's going to be really hard, even if you do a good job, to convince them to pay a premium for your service. And to try to get somebody who's like never done anything like this before to change how they are and do something different and hire coaching or join expensive coaching or whatever, that's just a big job. But unfortunately, you don't have to do all of it. Like there's people who are sold on the idea of high-end coaching and spending a lot of money on personal development. And there's people who aren't. And yeah, like there's far more people who aren't sold on the idea, which is perfectly fine. But there's enough of people who already are.
Right.
And trying to convince a human to change their mind on anything, by the way, is just really hard to do. Like, it's just hard to get humans to change their mind. It's way easier to find a human who's already doing something and to be like, yo, bro, you want to do this with me? Like you got a buddy. So you ever jumped out of a plane, Ren?
No, not that I can recall.
So I jumped out of a plane. So it was fine. Jumping out of a plane is one of those funny experiences where you're like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. And everybody's like amping each other up, right? And it's like, you don't really gather just what you're doing until you sign the waivers.
It's not real until you sign your life waiver, right?
The waivers are very serious. But then you get in this plane, right? And you're strapped to this other person because they don't let you jump by yourself. You have to jump tandem like a whole bunch of times, and then before you're allowed to go by yourself.
You need hours, like a yoga instructor.
Yeah, kind of. And so you have this guy on you like a turtle shell, kind of.
Right.
trying to ignore the centipede that you're creating at the moment.
The human centipede position that you're in. You're the little spoon, is what you're saying.
You're very much the little spoon. And you're in this tiny little plane with like a huge door that slides open. And the plane starts going up. And the plane's going up, and you're like, yeah, I could do this. Yeah, no, I could do this. That's not that far. That's not that far. And the plane just keeps going up. And then you start saying, I don't know if I can do this.
Right.
And then the plane keeps going up. And you're like, I don't know if I can. And then the plane keeps going up. And the plane goes up. This is the hardest part about jumping out of a plane, is that the plane goes up for 30 minutes. So all you're doing for that 30 minutes is thinking about how you are still going higher.
No, thank you.
And then by the time the door opens, the back of your centipede just basically rolls you off the plane, and then you're free falling.
Great song, by the way. Great song. Shout out to Bon Jovi.
Trying to convince somebody who's like, hell no, I'm not going to jump out of a plane.
Right.
To jump out of a plane is like a really hard thing to do. But finding somebody who likes to jump out of planes and being like, yo, you want to jump out of a plane this weekend is like pretty easy. That's why that's how I'm bringing that story together.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome for the explanation. God, we miss you, Amber. And so what?
So you've got so what you're saying is, instead of trying to convince people to become this type of person who believes in high-end coaching, I'm guessing you're going to say, find some people who are doing some high-end coaching.
Right.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
So like high-end business masterminds have pre-selected men who already spend $10,000 plus for online coaching of a different kind.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a tiny subsection of the population, which is fine. Like you don't need, like if somebody's gonna spend $5,000 package, like you don't need a lot of them.
Right.
But they've already arranged themselves into groups that David was literally just able to go and pay to be a part of. So these people have money, these people spend money, and these people have proven that they see the value in investing in themselves to build a better future. So instead of paying for ads or for design or for content, what David did was that David invested all of his free cash into one mastermind to start with. And it cost $10,000 a year, 10,000 plus whatever tax or something. When he did this, he could only afford the one-time payment. And so spread out the entire investment over 12 months. Now, whatever 10 divided by 12 is, I don't do public math. That might be something that's unreasonable for you right now too, or the idea that like every month you're going to put that out might be crazy to you. And that's totally fine. Like it's not so much about like, oh, you should join business masterminds that I'm making this point. It's this kind of idea that, you know, there are already groups most likely that are organized that have pre-selected your perfect type of person who already takes the type of actions that you want them to take with you. And they're already convinced that that's like the right thing to do. And so this group that he joined has an online community, and they have 3 in-person meetups around the world, which is pretty common for these types of things. They have some combination of an ongoing online community. I've been in a bunch of them as well. This is how I met David, because David joined this one that I was in.
Right.
And so that's how I know this story, and that's how I got to know him, of course, is I was in this community for a lot of years. So it was a great community. It is a great community. And so inevitably, though, in this business mastermind, things like mindset, mental health, fitness, and nutrition questions come up like basically daily.
Right.
Because no matter what topic people are there for, it could be business to music to gardening, fitness, nutrition, and mental health are always going to be hot topics. Like no matter what world you're in, the nice thing is those people are always going to be interested in fitness for like, it might be for different reasons. So just to like give you super random examples, like business owners want to largely perform at their best. They want some sort of unfair advantage, or they just have egos and want to show off because they've already succeeded in the world of business. And so now there was a guy that I knew that was he was the private physiotherapist for one of the richest men in the world in Saudi Arabia. He was basically headhunted, lived with him, and the stories that he tells working and living there for like 5 years were amazing. But this guy at different points in time was like top 10 or top 20 richest people in the world. He was the, you know, prince son of some oil, something or other. Right. And what he said to me was really interesting. He said, all of these like unfathomably wealthy Sikhs,
just a boring amount of wealth. Just if I think of it, I can just get it right now. That amount of wealth.
The amount of wealth is it's so silly. Not just how much wealth they have, but how much wealth their wealth generates. Because just when you have that much money, it just makes so much money all the time, just in like basic interest. It's such stupid amounts of money. It's like this guy would have an entourage of 30 people that travel everywhere with him, and he would just have 5 private jets that just fly people around all the time. And if they forgot like somebody's wallet at home, they just like fly the jet home and like pick up his wallet. It was like the stories that he tells are just like the funniest shit in the world. But what he said to me was that the one thing, this is where it's interesting, the one thing that these super wealthy people couldn't buy was being jacked.
Right.
And so that was like what they competed on. Now, I mean, they were all on steroids up the ass, but like, you still have to train hard and eat well.
Right.
You know, so you can sure, take steroids and that will help. But you still have to train hard and eat well. And so that was like what they competed on, because if you're that wealthy, like that's the one thing that you can't basically buy with your wealth is like muscles. Like we admire strong bodies and hard bodies because we know that they have to be earned. I don't care how many steroids you take, you still have to work hard. And what a lot of people don't realize about people who take steroids is that they take steroids because they already train harder than you, and they want to train even harder than they already do. Like that's why they take it. Like
it's not a free pass. It's not the super soldier serum from Captain America.
It's not
that's
like
not how steroids work.
Yeah, it's not like you stick this thing in your butt and all of a sudden you have muscles. It's like you stick this thing in your butt and then you train 5 times harder than anybody probably listening to this podcast. And then maybe you recover enough that you can train 7 times harder tomorrow.
Right.
And so business owners want to perform at their best, right? And they want to like kind of show off a lot of the time because they've already, won that part of their life.
Right.
Bartenders. So I'm just like a bunch of random examples, right? Bartenders want to look good because oftentimes the better a bartender looks, male, female, doesn't matter. Him, her, they will often get more tips. Gardeners want to plant and weed and harvest without pain. Like every community, fitness and health and mental health, of course, now really matter. And so, in this business community, right, whenever a question would come up, David just jumped in and gave great answers.
Right.
And so it didn't take him long to become really indispensable in the community. And the owner of the mastermind was really grateful to David because of his contributions, because what David was also doing was he was making the mastermind more valuable to its members.
Right.
Which reflected really well on the owner of the mastermind, who was getting these benefits without paying for it. And so he thanked David, and David offered to lead a free workshop to the members based off of questions they were having in the group. Then what this transitioned into is at the live events, he led both morning mindset sessions and he led group workouts to the groups. So quickly, David became the de facto expert for all things health and wellness in this premium community, right? The members, by the way, remember, that are already paying $10,000 plus to be in this online coaching group started hiring him. And so now he's like the expert to this high-end community without doing any of the other bullshit. And then with the income from the first 3 clients that he took on from this one, he joined another mastermind and repeated the process, and so on. And so just a few years ago, David couldn't afford to join a single business mastermind. He had to split the fee up into 12 payments. Now, David's spending upwards of $100,000 a year to be in multiple groups. Not only that, by the way, he's also benefiting from a world-class business education and network.
Right.
All without a single social media post. So what does this mean? It's proof that if you have something to sell, the obvious yet non-obvious truth is that you should go to where people already buy related services at a similar price point, be genuinely helpful there, and then you become the obvious choice. That's David's story.
I like the way that it came back around to the obvious choice. But I want to ask you an obvious question, because I think the listeners would appreciate you sort of dialing down on this one point. Like, is there any way in hell that they would not hire David as their coach? Like, could in their minds, could any other coach in the world possibly even exist after his relationship established in his group? Like, is it truly from my perspective, it's truly a no-brainer. Like
before the live events, yes. Because even though he's like the go-to guy in like the communities on their, like they had a Facebook community.
Right.
It was a private Facebook group, 180 people or something like that. So, he was like the go-to guy in there, but he's still a guy on the internet. Once after the first in-person event, where they met the guy, where they shook his hand, where he led them, the ones who wanted to, right? Like
right.
These were at these types of events. Have you ever been to any of these kind of business retreat
No,
events things?
it's funny because that's my second question, because I've only ever been to the summit of yours that I went to, and I wanted to ask a question about that right after you answer this.
Okay.
So no.
So
and I'd like to talk
events,
about that.
So I've been in a number of these communities where, you know, they cost 10,000 plus a year, and they're general business communities. And I joined them because I think that it's really important to get insights from other industries and bring them back to our industry. I think that the fitness industry has a lot to offer, but I think the fitness industry can also benefit from the wisdom of a lot of industries, and other industries can benefit from what our industry does, right? It's the cross-pollination. So I try to go out of my way to learn what other industries are doing and think about how to kind of bring them in. And that helps me kind of see my world as an outsider. I liken it to this example where if you're in a forest and you're right up beside a tree, all you can see is the tree bark. If you take a few steps back, you might be able to see that tree and a few trees. But if you walk up the path that overlooks the valley with the trees, you can see the river on the other side.
Right.
And so oftentimes it's not necessarily more information that you need. It's just to be able to see your situation as an outsider without all of the bulk, all of the clutter in your own situation. So anyway, these events, they will often have some sort of a yoga mindset workout session early in the morning that's optional. And it could be anything. So yeah, it could be yoga, or for example, I don't even know what his name is, but what's the guy who started Spartan? I
don't know his name.
His name is, but the guy who started Spartan, the CEO, the founder of it. He was in one of the groups, and we spent a fair bit of time together at this event. This event was the smaller one; it was like 65 people or something. And he ran basically like a Spartan beach workout in the morning first thing. This was in, was it Santa Barbara? It was somewhere along Highway 1 in California. Was it Santa Barbara? It was along that coast.
Santa Monica?
Nah, it wasn't Santa Monica. It was further up along the coast. Anyway,
Northern California. It
was at Four Seasons, or one of those fancy ass resorts.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so stuff like that, but it's always optional. And so the people, of course, who show up to these things are the people who are into these things.
Right.
What's also really interesting though, and so anyway, to answer your question, probably not. I mean, I don't actually know when it happened with David. I could ask him. David's not his real name, but I could ask this person we're referring to that the story is based upon. I could ask him when it happened, but my guess is that it really only started to happen once the in-person events, and then once one or two people hired in, then it starts to steamroll pretty quick, because then you start to see some people have results. And by the way, some of these people in these groups are really successful. For example, Mark Manson is the client of this trainer who David is based off of. And Mark Manson, author of Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and Will Smith's book and stuff like that. And so Mark's in one of these groups, and Mark's a super chill guy. I like the guy a lot. We've spent a lot of time together at these events. But when he wanted to get his health back in check, he hired somebody he trusted, who was somebody he knew from these groups, who was the health expert of these groups, who's David, not actually David.
Right.
So that's kind of how it happens. I think, it might be an immediate thing. It's often not though. But it's not like a cost thing or anything like that. It's a trust thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But he does become a relatively obvious choice. The other question is, I got a few bucks. I got a couple of dollars, some loose change. And what I've been thinking about this year is how zoomed in I've been on the internet, and how zoomed out. Well, that's not a good term. How focused I've been on the internet, and how unfocused I've been on actual humans in real places. And what's the upside of, pressing the flesh, actually meeting humans? And then I
said meeting people belly to belly
Yeah,
a couple
yes.
episodes ago,
And it was
you
horrible.
and Amber just gave me shit. And
Yeah,
meanwhile,
it's a horrible.
You just used the term pressing the flesh.
It's a lot lighter term.
No, it's not.
Than belly.
No.
What did you say? What did you say? Touching bellies, rubbing umbilicals. What was your phrase?
I said belly to belly. You said touching the flesh.
Belly to belly is much more. Much more of an innuendo than pressing the flesh. In any case,
what's the question, Roger?
So I've been thinking, hey, I need to get out there and meet some people. Like a few people know me now. Like I'm not a pillar of the industry, but I've interacted with enough other coaches that I'd like to see some of these people in person, right? And our good friend Molly Galbraith mentioned to me in my inbox but a few months ago, hey, as people are asking me to speak at these places and also telling me that they can't find speakers, is it okay if I mention you? And I said, well, hell yes, absolutely. You can mention me, but I'm never in the places with these people. Right. So I'm just not interacting at all with humanity. Like, is there, for those that have the time and obviously can travel, like, is there value? What's your thought of the value in that? I'm sure it's what you make it, but give me some insight here. Like, is that something that more people in our position should probably take advantage of? Does it depend on what it is? Right.
It depends what your goals are, right? I think there's a lot of potential benefits. I think it's just a matter of weighing out the pros and the cons. If you want to get good at something, you got to put in the reps at that thing.
Right.
Speaking is something that takes a lot of reps to get good at. It's a very unnatural thing to have a one-way conversation to a group of people. Even what we're doing is a very unnatural thing. And one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast with you and Amber is because it makes it more of a natural thing. Even though a lot of the episodes is me kind of going on this long narrative, the difference it makes for me, selfishly, knowing that you're there and I'm talking to you, and then hearing you laugh or give me like exactly what you just did, like respond, like give those little, that makes it a much more natural thing. There's a human there, and so you got to get in the rep. So if that's something you want to get good at, I mean, even just to look at these and say, hey, this is going to be practice. Right.
But I mean, just being in the company.
You being in the company. We talking about practice right now?
Yeah, practice. You're talking about misunderstood press conference. I won't get into that on the show. But I feel like I've not been in the company of other wellness professionals since 2017 in Toronto. And I think there's just an opportunity
if you want to be in the company of, if you want to be in the company of wellness professionals, though, to be a speaker at an event of other wellness professionals makes it much easier. And particularly if you can ask, and it's worth asking, if they say no, they say no.
Right.
If your goal is to meet other wellness professionals, if you can ask the host of the event, you're like, hey man, if it's no different to you, I'd really love to be able to speak on day one. And the only reason for that is, you're going to be there for day 2 and day 3.
Right.
And you're going to meet people on day 2 and day 3, but you're going to have spoken on day 1. And so then it's going to be way easier to meet people because there's going to be that kind of recognition there.
All right.
Makes a big difference.
That makes sense. So, we'll drop that sidebar because I know we got other important things we need to discuss. And that's a really selfish question for me. Some audience people might care, but that was really just for my benefit.
Well, I think it's valuable, though.
Yeah,
I think it's definitely valuable.
Amber's not here, so I got to do it. She would have cut me off.
Well, okay, so that's David. And I think David's story is an important story for knowing where your people are going there, recognizing that people who buy things buy a lot of things. People who don't buy much, and trying to convince somebody who doesn't buy much to buy stuff is a very, very difficult way to make a sale. And instead, trying to find somebody who's already spending money to spend a bit more money, or to spend that money on you instead, is actually a much easier way to kind of tackle the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. So small ponds, big fish.
Yeah.
You said you have two examples.
There's two people that I'll hit on. And in the last episode, so it would have come out a couple days ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember who said it. I think it was you who said that, but it's better to be a big fish in a small pond than a small pond and a big fish. A lot of people who are trying to compete right now are trying to be small fish or tiny fish in huge ponds.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're competing right now, trying to create a name for themselves in a very, very noisy world. And if they can break through, there's potentially great rewards. But it's going to be very hard to break through. The odds that they're going to break through are very, very small. And it's also going to take a long time. For many people, in many cases, it's way easier, way quicker, way more profitable to actually try to be a really big fish in a really small pond. Here's what I mean by that. Matthew is an online weight loss coach. His company profitably made $265,000 last year. Now, I say he's an online weight loss coach, but almost all of his clients live in his city. So technically, his business could be defined as hybrid, right? A combo of in-person and online. He does rent a room at a local gym. It's his office, but clients occasionally do come to see him. Most don't. And those that do come in to see him, like he's a nutrition coach. He's not a fitness coach anymore. He has been. But those that do, they don't come in to work out. They basically just do like they do their consult.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to touch flesh to flesh.
Right.
And
flesh to flesh. Belly to belly.
It sounds weirdly sexual. Okay. They go to his office, they close the door, they lock it, they make sure to lock it so they're in private. And they touch flesh to flesh. Well, he's got a whiteboard in there. He does education sessions, right, in person. I told you, man, belly to belly is way better than flesh to flesh.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's way better.
I don't think so.
And he does have. It's funny because I originally wrote this story, and I when I wrote it, I said 100% of his clients are in a city, but they're not anymore. You know, I went and looked up and did a bit more research on him, and it's now changed because he's gotten referrals of people who live outside of his city.
Right.
And so while it's all started in his city, he now has a few clients that are, and like, that's a very awkward way to write.
Right.
So to say, it's very like when you're writing, it's like English is kind of a stupid language this way. There's a lot of things that just sound really bad when you write it, but they're technically correct. And so you're like, shit, that's a bad situation to write because there's no way I can make this sound good. You know, if I were to say his company profitably makes $265,000 a year, period. 100% of his clients live in his city, period. Like, that's like a powerful statement.
Right.
But almost all of his clients live in his city. It's like, it kind of sucks now.
Yeah.
You know, so I've got to figure out a better way to say that. Anyway, that's what happens when you have an opportunity for people anywhere to work with you. It doesn't mean you have to go out and necessarily seek out people who live far away.
Right.
But it means that you don't lose those referrals if they happen to come in.
Very, very true.
And that's what happens.
I've had this conversation with several of our Online Trainer Academy students, actually, who tell me I can't find people on the internet, but people locally keep signing up. And I will tell them, well, that's great, because now you have this other piece. And as you bring satisfactory service to your clients, you can say, oh, by the way, you got to Uncle Jim Bob, who's 300 miles away. I know you said he wanted to train. I've got my performance plan on the internet, and I can help you. You and Uncle Jim Bob can work out with the same coach, right? That's overlooked a lot. So I like the story.
The amount of times when I would be training somebody in person, Body and Soul Fitness in Toronto, Canada.
Sounds nice.
It was a very nice boutique gym.
It sounds black, though. I'm not going to lie to you. Body and Soul, like it just.
It was very white and very Jewish.
It just sounds like a collection of albums or CDs from the '90s. I mean, Body and Soul collection.
Drake did go there.
Yeah. Oh well, that makes sense.
But he's not black. Let's be honest.
Well, I thought he's
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 gone
got
through
light
periods.
skin powers. Yeah, he's
He goes
sort of
light to dark, light to dark, light
yeah.
to dark. It's like, you know, he's kind of in that, like,
He's in the zone, Jonathan.
He gets in the zone. He cries at like a convenience store, you know, about some girl, and then he goes light to dark.
It's like a Lifetime television network lead actor, you know, ambiguously ethnic. You know,
yeah,
there's something there, but you don't know what exactly it is. That's
you don't
Drake.
know quite what it is.
Yeah, don't know quite what it is. You can play anything.
It's basically him and a bunch of white Jews. Okay,
right. Go ahead.
The amount of times, the amount of times I'd be training clients about body and soul, and I would hear something like, I wish there was a trainer like you.
Yes.
Who lived close to my sister, Margaret.
Yes.
She lives in, I don't freaking know.
Wherever.
Timmins, Ontario, whatever, doesn't matter. She lives too far away to come here and see you. And she's tried a couple trainers at her gym and she's never been happy. And she says, I don't think that training works for me. And I keep telling her about how great you are.
Right.
And I wish there was somebody like you who lived close to her. Well, back in the day, I couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
You know, but if I had that option, I would have been able to. That's all. And so anyway, that's neither here nor there. So what's his name?
What's his name?
Well,
what's the new
it's
name?
funny because I know what his actual name is, and I don't want to
don't want to
say
his
actual name.
Right.
Okay, so Matthew.
I think Matthew.
Yeah, Matthew. So the majority of Matthew's coaching is online, right? But it's people who don't live far away, and it sounds odd because when you think online, you probably think quote unquote far. But you can tell me if you've seen this with the students you mentor in the Online Trainer Academy. Many of the most successful online fitness nutrition professionals I've worked with and I've talked to over the years, I like Matthew, where the vast majority of their clients actually live close. Have you seen that pattern too?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm the opposite. I'm unusually the opposite. I have very few online clients that are in close proximity to me, but the opposite is much more true in talking
it's much more true.
Yeah, much more true.
So here's why I think that is. By leveraging tools online coaches use for local clients, what Matthew's actually been able to do is he's been able to offer a more flexible, more convenient, higher quality service than any of the gyms around it that have been slow to adopt technology.
Right.
And he's still there, though, to give the in-person personal touch when the people need it. So as a result of all of this, his business has become super popular in the small town in Iowa where he lives. And it's because it's kind of like taking advantage. It's like everybody else around you is slow to adopt technology and they're like, they take good jobs. And you're like, well, how about I just use this to make me better at my job and offer a better service than you, while still offering all the benefits that you're offering with the personal touch. And then I'll have a huge advantage in the marketplace over you. And then I'm going to take your job. And so take that job. And so, but like this kind of brings it back to, you know, coaches decide they want to go online. They mistakenly think that they need to compete against the world.
Right.
But what ends up happening when they do this is they become a really small fish in a really big pond, and it's really hard to rise above the noise. What Matthew discovered is that there's more profit, there's faster results, and more fulfillment in actually being a big fish in this small pond. He doesn't advertise. He does sometimes post like client stories on Facebook. And to be completely fair, he's a very good copywriter, so his client stories are good. But he doesn't create like content. Right. He just tells stories about his clients. And then he gets new clients through referrals. And so what he did is twofold, because when you're this big fish in a small pond, referrals come much easier. So he begun by partnering with small local gyms that didn't have nutrition programs. It was just, it might be the case now, I don't know. But for him, in this town that he was in, a lot of these gyms just didn't have a nutrition component. So he just went to them and he was like, hey, how about I be your nutrition component? You feed me clients that are training or whatever it is, and I'll give you a referral fee. Like, it's just like extra profit for you.
Right.
And to any company that you can go to where you're like, hey, there's no extra work for you. I'm going to offer another service to your clients. They're going to be able to get better results as a result of my service.
Right.
And it's going to be extra dollars to your bottom line with no extra work or cost on your part. It's like a pretty easy sell.
Mm-hmm.
And now he doesn't do that really anymore. But now his assistant clients just refer him all of the business that he needs because his community's tight knit, right? Like, it's small. And so he's become the go-to guy for nutrition in this town. Mm-hmm. And when you become the go-to guy for anything, guy, gender neutral, her, they, whatever,
right?
When you become the go-to person, the go-to guy for anything, anywhere, you're on easy street, man. So that's Matthew. So talk to me about Matthew, and then I'll talk to you about, give me any thoughts you have about Matthew, if there's anything else, and then I'll talk to you about Raul.
Well, I just like the willingness to operate locally, right? Like you said, there's something internally in a lot of the online coaches that they feel like it's a requirement to, well, if I'm in USA, I need clients in Guam. That's how online training works. And I don't know
I'm in
like
the strongest economy ever.
Right, right. I'm in the strongest economy where the most people spend their money. But I want to go to an impoverished nation and see if I can get 365 clients at $20 a month. That's my dream. And I don't know why that is, but you just don't argue with the market, right? The market tells you something and rewards you for something. Don't say, market, you're wrong. It should be this way, because it's silly. But a lot of people do it. That's my only thoughts on Matthew.
Right.
I got nothing else. There's a hurricane here named Matthew one time.
Yeah, that was a big one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a doozy.
Mm-hmm.
Funny story. I trained when I was doing in-person coaching. I was doing house calls, mobile trainer, blah, blah, blah. And I worked for a dentist and
you were meeting people flesh to flesh at their house.
Flesh to flesh. Yeah. I
Yeah.
worked for a dentist and a contractor, and their kids were named Matthew and Andrew. And I said, did you guys intentionally name your children after hurricanes? Or did they take on this persona after the hurricanes came? They both thought it was funny. The kids called me Uncle Ren. I didn't like that. So what's your other big fish, teeny tiny pond? Oh, it's the Aladdin. It's the genie comedy. Itty bitty living space. I'm sorry. Go ahead. So, I love Aladdin, man. It's good.
Aladdin was wonderful.
Both versions.
The new one was good. The new one was
it was surprising. It was surprisingly good.
Yeah,
surprisingly good.
I didn't think that the scene where he showed up, the Prince Ali Fabulous.
Oh, that was so good. That was so.
And he
good.
Shows up with all the elephants and shit. Yeah,
it was one of the best musical numbers I've seen in a movie. And I like musicals because I'm a musician. So second fish, because there's two ponds, correct?
Raul. So Raul's been a personal trainer for close to 20 years. So he's which color lifer in this game. Gotcha. He works in Toronto. He makes about $260,000 a year, and he has zero interest in online coaching. He has zero interest in marketing online. He has zero interest in creating content or really anything other than training his clients in person. And I know all of this because I worked with Raul side by side for 5 years in the gym.
Body and soul?
Yes. We're very good friends.
Awesome.
We're still very good friends. We're family friends.
Very nice.
And so Raul saw my transition. Mm-hmm. And he just doesn't he's just like a lot of the other coaches that I worked with, they'll be like, oh, I'm thinking about online. Like, can you tell me about it? Like, not once has Raul come to me and said hey man, I'm thinking about doing that. Or like, hey, I'm wondering about that. Like, not once, right? Like, just no interest.
Bro, it was like, dude, fuck that. That's awful, dude. Whatever.
Like, shit, I want to talk to people. Like,
do you, bro?
Meet people flesh to flesh,
I like Raul. He's out there pressing the flesh. Good for you, Raul. Just belly to belly with those clients.
Right.
But
So
Raul's
here's his
like, nah,
problem.
no way,
So
way, bro.
Raul started to run into a problem though, where his clients begun getting older. So these clients started to train with him when they were around 60, 65 years old, and they're now close to 80.
Sheesh.
I mean, that's what happens when people age.
I mean, I get it. Shame on him for extending life expectancy of people through fitness and wellness. What an ass.
So Toronto winters can be dangerously icy. And so these men and women would wake up, they'd see the ice, and they'd call to cancel their session that day because they didn't feel safe going outside. And the problem was that the gaps in Raul's schedule began adding up. And so here's what he did. It was brilliantly simple. He set up a camera and a tripod in his studio. If a client didn't feel safe traveling to the studio, they stayed home and he performed the session over video. Then he started doing the same thing for his busy professional clients because they'd sometimes run late. And Toronto traffic is also some of the worst traffic in the world. And when Toronto traffic did what Toronto traffic often does and becomes as possible, his clients would stay home and he trained them remotely. Raul's not an online trainer. As I said, no desire to do it. He is as old school through and through as they get. But by leveraging the technology that online trainers use, he largely eliminated the most annoying part of any trainer's day, which are out of your control client cancellations. So the stories of Raul and Matthew I like telling because you can work online and still be local, and you can use technology and leverage it to better yourself and better your service and also solve your problems and not be an online coach. Like none of these things are mutually exclusive. The key is to figure out how to best use and best make the technology work for you. When you do, most locally won't do that because they'll be trying to win the internet. And you'll become that big fish in a small pond, which I think is a very good kind of fish to be.
I feel personally attacked by the second story because
Why?
let me just tell you how arrogant I was in 2020 when people started to go online. We had the mass exodus. It was like a Bible story in 2020, for God's sake.
You mean a Torah story?
Right, if you say so, Jonathan. And then neither here nor there.
Mind I remind you which came first.
Oh my gosh. My father's a minister, and I'm gonna send this recording to him to get his blood pressure up. So but you know, I was overtly judgmental of people who were doing virtual training sessions versus online, because online was better. And I was going to show the world how much more efficient it was and how you can make more money. And what's the word for when you operate on your asynchronistic? Is that the word? You know, I don't have to be there when you're there, and I get to have my time as a coach.
Asynchronous.
Asynchronous. And that was such a limited view of what the opportunity was. Because like you said, in this case with Raul, he's just using the technology as a contingency. And that doesn't mean that this business is any worse than someone who's doing actual online training, you know, on demand.
80-year-olds, like they got a pair of dumbbells at home. Like he doesn't need the equipment in the gym. Like they like their being with him because they like touching flesh with him.
Right. But the belly to belly via video.
But it's not. Yeah, I mean, he was, and don't get me wrong. I mean, most sessions are in person.
Right.
It's a contingency.
Yeah.
Instead of, he would otherwise have lost this session. And now he basically never loses sessions, which has not only improved his income, of course, but also just improves his day and allows him to better structure his day. It allows him, I mean, he has 2 kids and a wife. As a personal trainer, that's like a hard thing to do. And it's allowed him to tighten up his day and tighten up the blocks of his day, because people are more willing to book sessions kind of on those like fringe times, because they know that if they can't make it or they're running late, they have this contingency.
Right. The
It's led to a better quality of life for them as well.
What I like about this episode is the gray areas, right? I've often said that coaching, one of the benefit of coaching, and I may have said it on one of our episodes, one of the benefits of coaching is it allows you to stop operating solely in the black or white of a thing, the clean or not clean of the eating, the training or absolute training super hard or absolutely not training, right? Coaching helps you see the gray areas of anything. And the gray areas are normally where people can live. They can exist for real. And I think you've given like 3 really good examples today of what those gray areas might be, because I think so many people see it as either I'm in person and I'm on my feet for 8 hours, right? Or I'm online on demand and there's no other thing I can do. Because this is how the coaches that we mentor approach me. I'm not doing that great online. I don't like social media. I don't want to do posts and content, and it doesn't work, right? Well, now I say, well, hey, buddy, are you training in line? Well, branch out from there. Like allow that to happen. Or, are you into the mastermind thing? Is there a group that benefits you as well as allowing you to become maybe the person in that group of humans who are already into self-improvement? Well, maybe you build it there. Are you the guy, in a certain place? Or maybe you branch off from being that, or can you use the technology as a contingency for what you actually like to do, and don't in a way that you don't have to feel like I'm not doing it right because I'm not doing exactly what the book, the Online Trainer Academy textbook says. I think these are great examples for people, something else to consider.
That's
right?
one of the really hard things, though, about building education. I mean, and that's why I like podcasts so much, and why I decided to kind of go like all in on this podcast, is because it allows us to give that kind of context and nuance. Because when somebody buys the Online Trainer Academy, when somebody signs up for the Online Trainer Mentorship, depending on what stage they're at, they're expecting some sort of a transformation. That they're saying, I'm here, I want to get there. This is going to be the bridge between the two. Right? This is going to be the framework. This is going to be the pathway. And while it's best practices, no two situations are the same. And there's going to be a messy middle. There's going to be some figuring out. There's going to be figuring out how to apply that to you. But it's hard, even though even though you're listening to this, even though you buy it and you know that intellectually, you're still going to kind of expect that from something you buy, because you feel like that's what you're buying. What you're actually buying are the best practices, and you're buying the decision yourself that, hey, now is the time to do this thing. And that can be a hard process to kind of navigate, because some people have success really quick with what we teach, right? Some people, it takes some time, and it's kind of sometimes hard to figure out, to estimate, to predict for somebody whether they're going to be one or the other.
Right.
It's kind of just like not fair sometimes. And some people just like get lucky sooner, right? And some people don't. And what's important, though, is that you no matter what you do, you kind of figure out a way to make this work for yourself. I think one of the beautiful things about the world that we live in today is you can figure out how to make it work for yourself. You don't have to do anything any which way. You can create your own destiny. You can take best practices, you can mold them to be yours. If they don't work, if you want them to work a little bit different, you can just do shit a little bit different. And if it works, you can keep doing it. And if it stops working, you can ignore it and do something different. And you might remember that something didn't work, and you might be embarrassed by it, but I can promise you the rest of the world has forgotten about that shit a long time ago.
We don't give a shit. Nobody cares what you did.
Nobody knows.
Literally yesterday, I don't know what you did. Whoever the you is out there listening to this, like, nobody knows what you did yesterday.
You don't know what I did. You don't know about the mistake that I made 2 days ago, because I made a mistake 2 days ago. Doesn't matter. It's a big deal for me. It's annoying for me.
Right.
But
I don't care.
You should. You're my friend. But I think we'll leave it at that. I think this is a good pod. I think we did a great job without Amber. I think it's
much better.
I think it was very, very good that we did a very good job as teenagers being left to their own devices.
There was a low bar in the last one, so it's not really that great that we did better than last time, because last time was really bad.
We got another couple weeks of this, man.
but this was better for sure.
Amber's going to be gone for a few weeks.
All right. Well, we might be gone when she gets back, John. Who knows?
All right.
she may come back to a burned down house. We'll see what happens. It'll be exciting, though.
I'll stay classy.